In the early days of World War II, America needed submachine guns. Lots of them. The famous Thompson was already in service, but there was a problem. It was expensive, complicated to produce, and difficult to manufacture in huge numbers. So when a lighter, cheaper alternative appeared in 1940, the US military paid attention. The weapon was called the Reising, and at first it looked like the perfect solution. Before the United States fully entered World War II, military planners knew automatic weapons would be essential. The Thompson submachine gun was already well known and widely respected, but it had been designed in the 1920s, and its manufacturing process relied heavily on precision machining. That made it slow and costly to build. With the possibility of global war approaching, the military needed something that could be produced faster. That's where firearms designer Eugene Reising came in. Reising had worked in the American firearms industry for years and believed he could build a lighter, more economical submachine gun. His design was compact, relatively simple to manufacture, and fired the same .45 ACP cartridge as the Thompson. In 1941, the weapon was adopted as the M50 Reising. At first glance, the Reising had a lot going for it. It was significantly lighter than Thompson and easier to handle. It also had a closed bolt firing system, which could improve accuracy compared to many other submachine guns of the time. For a military rushing to expand its arsenal, the weapon looked promising. Large numbers were ordered, and many were issued to the US Marine Corps. When Marines deployed to the Pacific in 1942, the Reising went with them, and that's when the gun met the environment that would define its reputation. The Pacific theater was brutal on equipment. Heat, humidity, mud, and fine sand could find their way into almost any mechanism, and the Reising turned out to be far less tolerant of those conditions than expected. The weapon's internal design relied on relatively tight tolerances. In clean environments, that could actually help with accuracy and smooth operation. But in jungle combat, dirt and debris quickly caused problems. The magazines also created headaches. Unlike the Thompson, Reising magazines often required individual fitting to the weapon. That meant swapping magazines between soldiers wasn't always reliable. During the Guadalcanal Campaign in 1942, these issues became impossible to ignore. Many Marines found the Reising prone to jams under combat conditions. Confidence in the weapon dropped quickly. As the war continued, the Marine Corps gradually moved away from the Reising. More reliable weapons replaced it in frontline combat roles. Some Reisings were reassigned to stateside training, ship security, or other secondary duties. In those roles, the gun actually performed much better. Without mud, sand, and jungle grime constantly interfering with its mechanisms, the weapon could function reasonably well. But by that point, its reputation had already been shaped by its early combat experience. The Reising wasn't necessarily a poorly designed firearm. In fact, in controlled conditions, it could be accurate, lightweight, and easy to handle. But wartime weapons have to survive far more than ideal conditions. They have to work in mud, rain, sand, and chaos. And compared to the rugged simplicity of the Thompson, the Reising simply wasn't built for that kind of environment. In the end, the story of the Reising is less about failure and more about a harsh lesson learned early in the war. A weapon can look good on paper, but the battlefield always has the final say.